So what we got here is a 17mm top and a 17mm bottom. These calipers just come straight out, no flipping up or anything like that. But before you take out the top and bottom screws with a 17mm spanner or socket, use a 14 just to slacken off the brake hose bolt nut down there. Now we're going to cramp these off. Because I've got new ones coming in, I'm just going to use a pair of mole grips just to clamp on any there and catch any brake fluid that comes out. The brake hose line, bowl underneath because you'll get some dribbling out. Don't forget to retain the nut. Then with a little bit of rag, just going to hold that and just tuck this up here somewhere out of the way. Finish extracting this one. Bolt here. Nearly there. We are there now. So this whole unit will come off from one piece like that. If you will be keeping these brake lines, you'd use like a protective wrap around there, a couple of bits of hose pipe or something. So because these calipers have been binding a little bit, it's created a bit more of a lift around the disc. So using the hammer, just lightly tap out the caliper from the disc. Guide rods here, you can see all this is just all like gammed up, which probably isn't helping. There we go. Yeah, they look perfect. So you can see how much wiggle room there is trying to move this piston out. The other way of doing it is to put a block of wood there so the caliper don't come flying across the garage, and then just to depress your brake pedal a few times until it pops on out. But they can also make a bit of a mess with all fluid going out everywhere, which I didn't want to do. Plus also this disc was actually quite lipped. Next time I would probably cover the whole driveway in a load of cloths or rags, because this is quite a tedious sort of task, pulling them out. So I just used a hammer here just to tap them out. So now we just want a little pick, ring pick, O-ring pick. And always just double check and cross-reference the size of anything you take off with what you've got in your packet on your new ones. Go. Now we're going to bring this up to cherry red. We're going to dunk them in. You might not be able to see it going cherry red. There's quite a lot of light in here. To be honest, I probably wouldn't be able to see it going cherry red, but I'm just going to heat it up. I believe the guide bolts are 7mm and I only had an 8mm Allen key, so I got an old 8mm and I heated it up first and then let it cool to room temperature, and then I filed it down, and then now I'm just giving it a bit of strength back to it and heat treating it. Drenching the oil. So brake, oil. Don't really want to be breathing that shit in. Not bad, it will do the job, hopefully. So now obviously these hangers, I believe they're hangers, they're obviously going to be, well, bloody caked on. So I'm going to spray it some WD-40, let them rest for a couple of seconds, couple of minutes, heat them up, give them a tap and see how we get on from there. So this is where all the hard work starts, all the elbow grease, and also whilst holding on to the piston with the mole grips and then using the hammer on the caliper. This did sort of bowl and curl the metal around the side of the caliper. Some people would probably advise you not to do this, in case you was to crack the casting, the metal casting of the caliper, but you know, as long as you're not putting real brutal, forceful hits into it and you're hitting it on a solid mass part of the caliper, really don't think you'd crack it, but don't take my word for that. Obviously here, you don't really want to be getting in any of the threads or on the inside where the piston goes inside the caliper. Using this wire brush took most of the rust off. We want to get rid of a lot of the rust so the citric acid is not sort of having to dissolve that before actually dissolving any real rust. This thing sent out a lot, and I mean an awful lot of little wire, loose wire fragments. I was picking them up from my clothes, picking them up from my jeans. They were everywhere in the back of the garage, all over the driveway. In here goes the caustic soda, lye, sodium hydroxide, whatever you want to call it. This is just to dissolve any of the grease or any natural tar or dirt and film that might be on there. This will also help the citric acid just to penetrate the rust a little bit easier. This is more of a citric acid paste. I'm just applying just to give it an initial kickstart. See all those little bubbles and everything? That's just this citric acid just attacking the rust, really. I'm pretty much going to leave it in there until the bubble stops. Bit of agitation. Now we're going to rinse it off in a load of hot soapy water. They've had it rinsed down in water now, and now I'm just filling them up with hot water. That should heat up the metal inside, so then when I take them out, they're going to sort of virtually air dry. What I was going to do here is just mark off areas that I wasn't going to paint, but decided because hammerite takes so long to cure that these soft areas will just sort of peel off anyway. This might not be the best way of doing it, but I haven't had any problems so far. Now we're just removing any excess rust that's on the inside of the piston. Obviously we're using a special boring tool. You can get these off of eBay for quite cheap. This will keep a symmetric sort of circular shape around there with a bit of brake fluid as lubricant. I've always learned the hard way, and the easy way is before painting anything, sort of work out where you're going to put it once you've painted it, and that's what I've done. I hung the calipers and the hangers below the workbench and had all that planned out before I started painting. The good thing about hammerite is it doesn't actually mind a little bit of rust, surface rust, to help bind onto. So I'm just degreasing more than anything with the brake cleaner. I don't really care too much if it's on there a little bit paint ain't gonna hurt. Again, these you can either use nipples or sticky labels. I'll put some sticky labels over them. I think I've done 2 coats of the hammerite. After using the brake fluid, when rebuilding them, they started wearing off little bits of paint here and there. In a few more months' time, when I come look at them, I might just give them another little bit of a paint up. Nice and clean. To be honest, I'm not really worried about the inside. A bit of grease on the inside there can only be good. Just make sure that the inner groove around here is nice and dry, free of rust, free of pitting. So now I'm just making sure there's brake fluid all in there, everything's lubed up with brake fluid. When putting the seal in, making sure it's nice and square, making sure it's pushed against the actual seal well. So brake fluid on anything that's going to go past the seal towards the caliper end. A lot of these greases are rated .3, .4 capability, compatibility, but brake fluid really should only be the only thing inside of that caliper. Put a bit of red paste up where the boot goes into the piston, and when I put this on, it's just going to push most of that paste up, and then when it goes into the piston seal, it's just going to push any more of that other grease further back up. It's a real tight fit getting these pistons into the caliper past the seal, and obviously it's going to have to be to make a nice hydraulic sort of seal on it. Once they pop in, they pop in. There we go. I'm going to push them all the way down. So he's seated all the way back in there. And it's just a case of just pushing this rubber bit over around here. With a couple more hooks, we just got to try and get this so it's sit in there without damaging the actual boot itself. Might be better off starting from the back here. I had an absolute nightmare trying to get one of the piston boots to actually seat properly around the piston, or actually around the caliper, and to actually stay on securely. Later on, I'll show you what I did eventually in the end. I actually had to remove quite a bit of paint around the surface. I think it liked that rough sort of surface, and the tolerances were really fine, and it wants to be a really sharp square edge to help it secure it. I'm not too sure if this is just going to be a caliper that I'm just going to have a problem and an issue with. The other one fitted fine, but if you get stuck, and I'm not too sure how this has lasted because I haven't checked my other one as of yet, put a bit of super glue around where the boot seats tends to give it something to grip onto, the rubber something to grip onto. If you do want to remove the piston, because this isn't so seized in, you can just put a screwdriver in carefully into the threaded ends where your bleed valve or your brake fluid line goes, and just push it out, cleaning off any shards of metal if you crate them accordingly. done. Here's a little super hinty tippy thing. Pretty Yaris. Got this boot cover on here that's clearly not fitting very well. So I'm using some STP carb spray cleaner. The lid of it kind of just goes over it perfectly. Now this is going to be one for the haters. This really wasn't sticking at all. Last resort I thought, you know what, I'm going to have to try some super glue, thinking that it wouldn't work because the rubber and everything. But it seems to work. Maybe the super glue's just put a little extra film in there, give it something to grip hold of. I don't know. I don't know how long it's going to last for. It's going to be so I have to keep checking every so often. Make sure the boot ain't come off. But it actually seems to be on there quite well and strong. So, and this was just a normal cheap super glue stuff.